Hello everyone, welcome to the 8th iOS tutorial. In this tutorial, I will show you how to define a local variables in Objective-C, and also the next subject is NSDictionary and useful methods of this framework, and also NSMutableDictionary, which has some useful methods that we will discuss about it. So let's move on. Let's start with local variables. If I want to define a local variable, it would be easier than defining properties and these stuff. So I would come here, and if I want to, for example, if I want to define an NS array, I would just say NS array and tab and local array and equals to NS array alloc. If you remember, we have to allocate memory and then we initialize it. So this is how we define a local variable. If you remember the properties, we would say, if we want to define a properties, we would say property non-atomic strong and then NS array and the name, for example, and P defines a property array, and then we had to synthesize it. Synthesize P array equals underscore P array. Right here. So see, this is property and this is local variable. What is the difference? So you can access this property anywhere in your class. If I, for example, have a method here which is void my method and I want to access this property, I would easily say self.p array, and I can do anything with this array, but I cannot access this local array here. If I start typing about this local array, the compiler doesn't know anything about it. Local, see, it cannot recognize there's no option for local array. So we define local methods here, and then we can use it. I allocate memory for that, and we can use it right away. And we have the same thing for NSString, for example, NSString and local str equals, and we can add some value for that value, and this is a local for a string. That's it. It's all for local variable and defining, and you can right away allocate memory and initialize it or whatever you want to do. Okay, let's define some local variable of NSDictionary. Let me get rid of these local variables and this property to make some space, and I would create a local variable with this, with defining NSDictionary, and I can say tab and I will give it a name myDict, and we would equalize by NSDictionary, and we will use a useful method here. Instead of saying init, we would use a useful method of NSDictionary, which is dictionary with objects and keys. We can look for this. See, this is right now, it's dictionary with objects and keys. If I press enter, it will ask me for some keys and some values. So I have to define at first some value. For example, I would say the first value would be value 1, and here's the key for this value, key 1. Because it starts from 0, let's put it value 0, key 0. So right now my dictionary has 1 value and 1 key. So if I want to call this value, I would say I want a value with this key 0. If I want to define next, I would just hit add another one by defining, say, add sign value to. This value could be any object. I just use string here. You can use anything you want. So you have to put comma. I just forgot it. You have to put comma between value and keys. So we have a value. This is the first value and key, and then we have the second value. I should define a key for this as well. So it would be key. Oh, again, okay, it starts from 0. So next time, I would say also I have to have comma between these two as well. And again, add sign value to and add sign key. Yeah, key 2 as well. And comma. So our dictionary right now has there's no comma. Let me just delete this. Yes, our dictionary has 3 keys and values. See? If I want to have a value of this key, I would say key 2, and it should return value 2. So right now I was just want to define. I just want to get the number of keys and values here. So the second method actually of NSDictionary that we want to learn is count, and I'll just log it. I would use NSLog that we learned before in previous tutorials, and I would say percent, since this is a number, an integer, I would say percent %d, and I just call my dict, which is this, my dict, and dot, we have a method count. Okay, it doesn't, okay, to put comma, and my dict, and then count. Okay. So the compiler would get error. It was not before, since I updated, and it says instead of putting %d, you have to put %lu, which is long integer, unassigned integer, or long integer. So let's, instead of, it doesn't matter, we just put instead of d, we put lu to make the compiler happy, and we would run the program. So it should show me 3 as return, because right now we have 3 items on this dictionary. So we learned 2 methods at the same time. The first one is dictionary with objects and keys. We have some objects here and the keys here. I put it in a different line to make it more readable, but you can have it all in one line. It's just your preference, it's just more readable. And I just run the program by play, putting this play button here. If I zoom over here, you should know by now, and it should return and log, and it's running right now. That's why I'm talking. So now it returns 3. See, it has 3 items. So good, everything is good, we're happy. So we will go to the next method that I want to show you. Next method is value for key. For example, if I want to have this value, it has a key. I just call the key and it should return this value. Right now it is a really short value, and we can use other methods, but think about object, and if we want to call the object and look for an object, it's better to have a key for this object. Otherwise we have to search a lot for this. So dictionary, this is the reason that we use dictionary. But just for now, I just used simple keys and values. if I want to return a value for this key, we have a method called value for key, and we can easily return it by this. I just log it, NSLog, and I show you, since it returns a string, we should say %@. As you know, before we used %lu, which is suggested by the compiler, but since we want to return a string, which is here, it should be %@. And then we can say myDict, and then value for key. See, it just gave me this option, value for key, and we just have to name the key. What is the key? So which one do we want to return? We want to return the key 0. Key 0. And now I can run the program by putting this play button, and it should show me at first number 3 because of this log, and then key 0 has the value of value 0, so you should return value 0. And if it's faster, so come on, yeah, there you go, it's value 0. If you can see, it's value 0. So we'll go to the next method in NSDictionary, which is which I will log it, and it returns all of the values, NSLog. And what it does, it just returns all of the values that we have here inside of an array. So if I show you, it would make more sense, since it's all of them are string. We want the definition of them, we want the description of them. We would put %@, and I would just call this method, which is all values. See, we have the same method called all keys, and it returns all of the keys, but we want to use all values. All values. Oh, should put tab. And then if I run the program, it will give me an array, a description of all of the values, and let me just zoom it in, and you can see it returns all of the values. And come on, okay, it returned. See, value 1, value 0, value 2. And I should say it's not the dictionary, it's not sorted. So although we put it value 0, value 1, value 2, but it's not sorted. See, when it returns, it's not sorted. That's why it can search it really fast, because it's not sorted. And when we call a key, it just goes to the key, and it doesn't start from this beginning or started from the bottom. That's all for NSDictionary. Okay, now let's define some NSMutable dictionary, which is the mutable version of NSDictionary, and it's for the time that we want to add stuff to dictionary, remove, or anything else. We want to modify this dictionary, because once we create the NSDictionary, we cannot modify it, but we can modify NSMutable dictionary. So let's use properties this time, and we can say @property non-atomic and strong NSDictionary, mutable actually, mutable dictionary, and the name of the dictionary, I would call it my mutdict. And then we can synthesize it, @synthesize my mutdict equals to my mutdict. So at first I have to initialize it. Let's get rid of these local variables in this dictionary. I would say self that my mutdict equals to, then say NSMutableDictionary alloc. We allocate memory for this, and then we initialize it exactly like NSArray. And then we can add stuff to this dictionary with using this useful method, which is, say, you can say self that my mutdict, and we can say set object for key. As soon as I add set object, it will give me this method, set object for key. So we would say what object you want to set and what for what key. And I would say, okay, my object, as we defined before, for example, our object is Apple. For what key? We want to define a key for this, which is iOS. It's exactly, if I want to, I didn't put that sign here. It's exactly like the local variable when I added a value 1, value, if I can type, value 0, and key 0. So it would say this key, by defining this key, it would return this key. So I set this object for this key. But right now, to make it more nice, I would say Apple for iOS key. And then in the next line, I want to set another object, self that my mutdict set object. What object? This time I would say Google, and for what key? This time I would say Android. Okay, and this is how simply you add stuff to your dictionary. Right now our dictionary has 2 objects, and I can show you easily by NSlog, and I would say, because it's long unassigned integer or whatever the Xcode called, LU, it should be %LU. If you remember, we used %D and the compiler gives error, and this time I just used LU to make it happy. My mutdict, and if I run the program and see why it's giving me error, %NSlog, and let's see what's the error. Expected identifier. Oh, I have to say count. I forgot to count. So if I run the program, it should give me 2 because we have 2 objects in this NSMutableDictionary or my mutdict. And if my computer was faster, you would see it much faster. I should change it. And come on. Come on. Yes, it is 2. As you can see, it is 2. And we can go to the next useful method, and we have the value for key for NSMutableDictionary as well. For example, if I want to return Apple, I can give iOS and it will give me Apple, and I can use NSlog again to show you. Since we want the definition, description, we would say %@, and we can say self that my mutdict, and this time we'll say value for key. For what key? We want iOS. So, and see here, you should give it a key and it will return us here. See, it should return Apple because we gave it this key and it should return Apple. And see if it actually return Apple or not. And CPU and usage. Come on. Yes, it returned Apple as a result. And we have another useful method here, which can remove when you want to remove an object from your NSDictionary. You just say self.myMutDict and then remove object for key. So you can just give it a key. For example, this time we would say we want to remove this object, this entire object. So we just give it a key and it will remove the object. So I would say I want to remove the Android since we don't use Android here, and it will remove it for me. And in order to show that we actually removed it, we can just log and count the dictionary again to see how many objects do we have. It should show 1 because we remove Android, and as a result it will show you 1. Yes, see, it's 1, so it removed that object. That's all.